In the previous episode, we platted and built Phase 1 of Chue Vang's expansion of Johnson's Creek. The phase included some larger lot housing along the creek, as well as a commercial main street in what will be the heart of the neighborhood. In today's episode, we are building Phase 2 of the development, which will take place in between Main Street and the lake. We'll be building many of the city's services and many of the amenities that keep people in the neighborhood, including recreational opportunities and shopping. We'll build a variety of residential uses and focus on providing housing across all income levels, and build in a way that prioritizes active and alternative transportation rather than cars. And to that end, Chue has been holding meetings with Van Buren transit officials and the Mayor and City Council of Johnson's Creek in order to build support for bringing transit to the community. Doing so would require joining the Regional Transit Authority, which Johnson's Creek has agreed to hold a referendum on. Van Buren Transit has suggested bringing a train station to the city while it's still possible, as well as a local bus service, which would require a new bus barn. They believe that these services should go right about here. The referendum is overwhelmingly approved and passes 78% to 22%. And because of that, we'll be building those services today as well. But before we do any of that, we have to fix this. We've gone from a UK build to a US build. And if you like the idea of creating a more walkable active suburb, hit the like button. And if you prefer a private, quiet suburb, hit the like button for that too, and let me know what you prefer in the comments. Or if you'd prefer, drop an emoji for the sake of engagement. Without any further ado, let's jump right in. Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays, where we are building Johnson's Creek in Clearwater County, and we've got a good one today. We're going to be adding on to this neighborhood in a really interesting way and incorporating a lot of new assets along the way. But before we get started building, I want to talk about the game plan. So the very first thing I want to do is separate the area out that we'll be building in. We're going to be building in this general area today, Phase 2. We're also going to be working at our city services campus and in our elementary school campus. But I want to carve out a couple of things within Phase 2 as well. We've carved out space for both a YMCA and a church. These are really important institutional amenities, and having them in the community is going to be really important if we want to keep people in the community. And then right here, we're giving all of this land to Van Buren Transit. They're very likely to sell off some of this eventually, but for today's episode, it's going to be really important that they have a lot of space to work with. And then the final changes are that this is going to be a commercial waterfront. Think of some quay walls along here and some shops. This will be our residential area, and this might actually extend into the waterfront. We have to see how this all lays out. And then right here, we're going to have some apartments around the elementary school so that we have a nice mix of available housing in this neighborhood. And with that, we should move right on to focusing on our transportation network enhancements. So let's begin by upgrading our roadway network, which will keep us within our planning area and help us figure out exactly what we're going to do today. It kind of frames everything out. And to that end, I want to introduce a new set of roads to the build. Revo recently released the Suburbia roads, and they're really interesting. So I'm going to place a few of these so you can see what they're all like, and then we'll choose the most appropriate roads for this neighborhood. All right, and I've upgraded a couple of roads so you can see the differences. And what you can see with these roads is that, first of all, we do have some collectors that are a bit wider. We've also got some 2-lane roads that are a bit wider. And then the terraces on these are all different. I love this because this is always a bone of contention when you're building a new neighborhood. Do you get attached sidewalks like this? Do you get detached sidewalks like this? How much terrace space is there? It's all very important. And in an area that has winter, you'd want wider terraces so that when you're plowing, there's a place for some snow storage. So very important stuff. But I think that we're going to have a use for almost all of these throughout the build. And I want to start transitioning to these for a variety of reasons, which you'll see as I'm building out the episode today. But I think we're going to start out with a road that has a fairly decent terrace. And I'm going to upgrade all of the roads in this area. Now here's something I want to show you about these assets that I really love. So if you use some of the roads that have the attached sidewalks, attached meaning that the sidewalk is attached to the road without a terrace in between, it creates basically the perfect cul-de-sac bulbs. So the nice thing about this is we won't have any conflicts with driveways. And if we attach a path to here, it will connect nicely. And we are planning on doing that because we want to focus on our pedestrianism in this area. Now, one thing that I noticed is we have this cul-de-sac bulb right here. That's not going to work for us anymore, that we're going to have a church here in the future. So we're going to get rid of that. And then right here, we have a highway. For the time being, we're going to upgrade this to be a highway. This will very likely become a city road in the future, But for now, we're not going to build in that area, so we'll just convert it like this. And then while we're thinking about this, we should probably put our water pipes underneath the road right where they belong. And we will have more utility work to do, but we're going to have to wait until we build the rest of our roadway network out. But now I want to transition to our train station. And the very first part of that is going to be extending a road into the Van Buren transit area. And we need to add a train station here eventually. But before we do that, I want to get a parking lot to serve this train station. And I think for today, we're going to use our big parking lots. So I'm just going to add a parking lot right along here. I want to give it a little bit of space so we can add some landscaping around this. So I'm not sure if this is going to be enough parking for the train station. We're going to have to figure that out. This is going to serve double duty. We're actually going to have all of our bus routes come into this area, and we'll have our train right about here as well. So this is going to be a very busy area. And I know what you're saying. Big parking lot, it's a train. People shouldn't, they should take the bus to the train. They shouldn't drive to it. But here's the thing. We're a long ways away from Van Buren. And if we take off our ideological hats for a moment and just think pragmatically, I'd rather have someone get out of their car and into a train or a bus, even if it's only for a portion of their trip. All of that said, we need to get a train station for this location. And I think we're going to go very simple. Van Buren Transit's been using the exact same train station. And why would we deviate from that? So we'll just grab this train station that's over here, use our picker, and we'll bring that right over here. And the location of the train station, even though they're really happy about it, they're not going to be happy about the noise. And that's one of the reasons why it's okay to add a church right here. Think about it. The church is okay with the noise. They actually create their own noise, and it's going to be a good neighbor for this type of use. That also is going to change the desirability for uses right here. I could see this being high density residential uses. We'll have to cross that bridge down the line. And with that, we need to get a train track here. This is going to be a little bit of a trick because I think that we've got to elevate a good portion of this. And here's why. We have our expressway right here. It's already built. We're not going to reconstruct that. We've got to build a bridge over the expressway, over the river, and then we have to build another bridge right here because we've got another train track. We can't go straight through that. I guess you could theoretically, but this freight operator would never let that happen. So the way that we're going to start this is to draw what little we can. So I use the picker to grab our train track. I want to make sure we're using the exact same North American rail. And let's get this teed up in a way that makes some sense. I'm going to give us a little bit of space right here, and we'll send this basically parallel with this road. And then we're going to make a connection through there. And rather than using the create connection mode, which I've been told is inappropriate, we're going to use the create curve mode, which is actually the right tool for just a normal curve. And look what you end up with. Nice, really gentle curve, exactly what we're looking for. And then before we flood everything out, let's get this upgraded to a bridge. And the next thing we need to focus on is getting the train connection to this line. So the way that we're going to start that is with a parallel track that basically runs along here to gain some incline so we can have a sweeping bridge that basically crosses everything. And I think that we're going to use the hill to our advantage. You might think it makes the most sense to operate this new line right in between our existing road and the train, but I think it actually makes some sense to go over here so we can still stay on solid ground rather than having a gigantic bridge. So let's start out with our create parallel mode tool, and we're going to basically parallel between here and we'll say here. We'll tab that over, and then I want to get this far enough away that we don't have a bunch of tearing. And then again, we'll use our create curve mode to make a nice sweeping connection in. Now, obviously this is limiting our connections. If we have a bridge that goes across this way, we can't easily get to Shorewood. But I think right now you kind of take what you can get, and this is what we can get. Now, before we create this next connection, I want to get the elevation right. So I think that if we go into move it and we set this to terrain height, it'll pop it up a little bit. That's not high enough. So I'm going to try to get this to where I think it needs to be, which is probably somewhere around right here. And let's see what our slopes look like. That's exactly why we moved this over. Now it's 1.1%. We wanted to keep it below 1.5. We are in a good place. So now we can create curve, and look at that beautiful curve. We're going to need to do a lot of work to make this happen. We've got to relocate some power lines. We've got to bridge this, but I think that this is all doable. And obviously the very first thing is we just want to make sure we're not blocking the river. And then we've got some node issues here. This is a fairly easy one to resolve. We'll just add a node right here and remove this node. Temporarily, I'm gonna move this power line. We need to come up with a new solution for it, but let's get these figured out first. So this is gonna be another node concern where the node is in the wrong spot. So I'm just gonna move it slightly and then get rid of the old one. And then we can bridge this entire span. And I turned collision off again so I don't destroy the power line. That's the last thing that we want. And there we go. I want to catch a train underneath here to make sure we've got enough height. I think that we're good, but you always want to double check. And while we're waiting, we're going to re-slope this because I think that we've created some issues for ourselves, potentially. No, 1.2. We're still in a very good place. Let's just check this height. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. I think we're going to be completely fine there. Obviously not quite so fine right here. Let's do the simple solution. Rather than rebuilding this entire network, I'm going to send this right here and then we'll boost up the heights of this one. And then I'm curious, can I use the slope tool on this? I can. That is amazing. And look at that. They seem very reasonable-ish. I want to know if you have worked for a rail operator, is this okay or is this totally off base? If it is, I will change it, but I want to know. Now we've got to finish off our bridge here, and the way that we're going to do this, we've got to get our elevation okay here and test it out on the highway, and this is more than good enough. We're completely fine. We could actually probably begin sloping down here if we wanted to, but I don't really want to. What I would rather do is change this into a truss span because I think that that would make some sense. And then I want to slope again. So we're going to slope between here, maybe here. And this is interesting. We are ending our slope right here, which is basically where we have to bridge again. So this is likely going to change, but we know that this part is at least okay. So I will add those trusses back in here. And then the other thing I want to do is kind of fix these spans. You can see that they're a little bit different. So I'm selecting all of these nodes, and then we are going to line up objects, which breaks them all, but don't worry, we've got a solution for this. We're going to arrange at line mode, select this one, and look at that. Beautiful. Little issue here with the highway, and I'm inclined to move the highway. Not the height of realism, but you know what? It's going to be just fine. And there we go, a little bit of cleanup, and it's looking very good. Now we've got to elevate over here, and this should be pretty straightforward, but you know, things sometimes aren't. We're going to elevate this and give enough clearance for a semi, and we'll do the exact same thing on the other side. And then I'm Control-Hing these to be the same height, and I have this paused because I think we just cut all the power off to Johnson's Creek. So we'll fix that in just a moment, but let's get this sloped out through here. And my guess is we basically, yeah, we could just set this all the way back through here. So now that we've got this bermed up, we need to smooth this out a bit. So I'm just going to grab the height here and spread it on either side. And we'll take our brush strength down and just feather it out. And I think this would be a lot more economical solution, and maybe we're even taking some of the fill from over here and just moving it right over here. Now the last thing we're doing is sloping down to our train station, and a beautiful 1.3% grade through there. I love it. The same story as last time. We're going to add a couple of trusses here, and we will bridge this a bit further considering that we want to have this nice and balanced. And I think I'm okay with the way that this looks. And I just used the slope terrain tool to get this to be a nice taper along there, so it seems like it makes a little bit more sense and isn't quite so abrupt. We've got to smooth this out as well, but we've got to get this bridge in place. And I decided to play with this a little bit more. We added a truss span across here, and I think made it look a little bit nicer. And then the very last thing we have to do before we get this resumed again is fix our power line. And I think our solution is going to be that we quote unquote bury these out or delete the road. So what I'm going to do is get rid of all of the lines right here, and then we're going to use a transformer to try to jump these. And there we go. I used move it to just pull them around so I could use 2 instead of 3, so it works just fine. So now this is resumed again, and boy oh boy, I like the way that this turned out. I think that this is absolutely spectacular. But we've got to get this thing running, and before we get it running, we've also got to change the track here. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to unlock this within the network multi-tool. And then you can't just upgrade this to this type of track. You've actually got to look for a platform. So this is one of our platforms that we have right here. You can tell because it has the cement on the side. So if you're going to do this, make sure that you use one of these pieces. Otherwise, the train won't be able to stop here and nobody will be able to board here. Now we upgrade that, and you can see that this is correct because it has the crossing track here so that the trains would be able to go in the opposite direction in the future. So let's add some power here, and you can never go wrong adding a transformer. This will link up eventually, and this will just help us out. And with that, we are ready to add a route here. So we're going to add a stop right here. Then we'll add our next stop right here. And then for our final stop, let's give it its own dedicated terminal. And then we added that back to the local train station, and now we're completing the line. So there we go. And they all love it. And I love it too. And I just want to see what kind of train they're adding to this. We're using our CityLink Evergreens, and we should convert that over here as well. And there we go. So we've got 4 stops, 1 vehicle. We will adjust these after our city tour. But for now, we've at least got it operational, and folks in this area can now start to see their land values increase and their driving decrease. Next, we're going to add our bus barn. And I want to have that right next to this. This again is Van Buren Transit land, so we might as well have it right here. I'm going to use Move It to locate this exactly where I want it to be. We'll give it a little bit of space so we can have some landscaping, something to add a buffer. And then we're going to convert this road. So we've used one of our new suburban roads, but we have this terrace, and that's not super helpful here. So we'll convert this over to one with an attached sidewalk. I'm going to add a cul-de-sac bulb here because folks are very likely to turn around. And there we go. And the last thing I want to do with this facility is I want to add that buffer I spoke about. So you could definitely imagine there being some sort of separation here to block off the view of all of the different activities that would be happening here. So I'm going to use our new suburban fence. And you can see it's really difficult because this is a network area. So I'm just going to draw it off to the side, and we'll use Move It to get it into place. And there we go, just a little something to jazz it up a bit. And now I'm looking at this and I'm realizing we don't have any lights in there. So we're going to need to resolve that because this would be a very unsafe situation right now. Yeah, that's no good. Let's grab some street lights. Now I'm going to use this double parking lot light from the Modern Japan Content Creator Pack. And the way that we're going to handle this is I'm going to place these, just a couple. So I put 5 right here, and then I'm going to add one at the end here. And I'm hoping that this is enough to provide adequate coverage. If it's not, we'll add another one. And you might be thinking to yourself, he's gone crazy. I have not. I have an idea. So there we go. We've selected all of these. And then we'll line up the objects. And I think that we need one more, but that was pretty good. Just for good measure, we'll add 2. And now I'm only selecting the lights. I can select all of them, line them up. Perfect. Then copy it and paste it right there. And now you can see it's perfectly even. We did that very quickly, and I love it. And now I want to landscape around here just a little bit while we're over here. You'd have to think about the noise that this would be creating. And I am curious, how bad is it? That's pretty bad. So we're going to add in some trees back here. It's only going to get worse as we add bus routes. So let's just be cognizant and thoughtful of that right off the bat. And there we go. Fairly simple landscaping, just a little something to keep the lights and the sound within this area. And now I want to build our bus routes, and these might need to change over time, but for the time being, let's just get them started. So I'm really envisioning 3 separate routes here. One route will start here and go through Johnson's Creek and end back here. The other will be a bi-directional route that goes through the new portion of the community. So let's start with our first route. Our first stop will be right here. And because this is a circulator, we're not completely mirroring this, but we're giving lots of opportunities to get on. And then for our next one, we want to get around basically this entire community, including our new segments of the community. And then we want to mirror this in the opposite direction. And we will be adjusting individual stops, particularly in our new area, but more or less we went every 2 blocks or so. So I know that that's pretty extreme. In reality, it's not a big deal on a local route because you wouldn't expect to stop at every single stop. We'll see how it works in the game. The other thing that we need to take a look at is the type of bus that we're throwing at this. I think we're going to just swap over to one of our new 30 capacity buses just because they look nicer. And then we'll leave this as is. And we'll have to see how those go. We'll check in on that at the end of the episode as well. And now I want to focus on our pedestrian connectivity through here. There are going to be a couple of areas where we want to think about it after the fact, such as our city services center, the church and the YMCA, and the elementary school. So basically most of the area. But the only time that you can get a path in between these sorts of areas, in between cul-de-sacs, is when the neighborhood's being platted. I've seen this reserved. So it's reserved and never built. And then down the line, folks are not interested in this being built. Not at all. In fact, they think that the land is theirs and you go to take it and they go, I will sue you. So I don't want to be sued. We're just going to build that right now. And through here, we're going to do the exact same thing. But I know off the bat that we're going to build these neighborhoods a little bit differently. So I'm going to add a new roadway through here, a pedestrian road, but not one of the plazas and promenades pedestrian roads. We're going to build one of these zonable pedestrian paved roads. And the reason for that is we're going to orient all of our houses to this road, which I think is going to give us a really interesting development pattern through here and really prioritize, once again, we're prioritizing the walking through here over anything else. And I wanted to do that so that when we add this path through here, we are not breaking things too much. And then I want to go into node controller and we're going to add actuated crossings in each of these locations. Again, we are prioritizing the pedestrians. And the way that we'll fix these is just going into move it. You can just hold down Alt and slide this right into the center. I don't need to worry about it on these pedestrian roads because these are basically pedestrian paths, but I'll do it anyway. And now I want to really focus in this area because this looks pretty weird. You might be wondering what this is. Basically, these suburbia roads add bus boarding platforms, which I love. So we're going to need to do a little bit of adjustment here. And the way that we'll do that is we're going to add a node. We don't want this platform to be quite that large. So I'll add a node here and then we've got to adjust our bus route. So we just pull that over. Now we have a crossing right here and our boarding platform right there. That is beautiful, a thing of beauty. Same thing over here. We're going to do the exact same thing. And there we go. I was contemplating moving this right here, but I think our elementary school is going to be in this area. So we'll leave the crossing right next to this. And then the last thing with our transportation network is parking. And this is something that Astrogenash pointed out too. Astrogenash? Astrogenash. Astronash? Let me know how to pronounce it in the comments. I'm sorry for butchering it. But I forgot to put the parking in the previous one, so we're going to add that right now. Well, probably have to take out these homes as well for it. Sorry, guys. A little bit of eminent domain, and we're good to go. Now, I just want to use some of the really basic parking assets that came with the base game update. And I honestly think that these are absolutely perfect here. And I know that you might not love all the parking, but here's the thing. It's a suburban environment and folks are going to expect this parking to be there. So we are going to provide it. And with that, I think we're ready to move on to building our city services. I want to begin by thinking about what we're going to be building in terms of city services. I think at a bare minimum, we need a police department, fire department, an elementary school, a library, a post office, a hospital, and death care. And if we could, it'd be nice to fit in a roadway maintenance facility and a few other things. And most of that's going to be focused around this area. So I want to look through these and we're just going to place a couple of assets right off the bat. And I want to use these lovely Japanese district stations. So I've placed a couple of different things and we've got our fire station right here. We've got our police station right here, our hospital. And then over here, we've got our elementary school, which actually comes with this beautiful library asset. So we're combining the two of those to have a unique campus. And it looks like they're overlapping, so we'll need to fix that. But I love the way that these fit together. So we're gonna incorporate these in this location. Probably gonna pull these back and have some sort of entry drive, but we'll cross that bridge in a little bit. I want to think about a couple of other things. Obviously, we don't have death care, and I don't have a good custom death care asset outside of our crematorium cemetery complex. So if you have an idea for that, please let me know down in the comments. And then we'll grab this USPS, nice lovely post office with that flag. Oh, I wonder if I can bob that out of existence. We can. I replaced the flag that came with this asset through Bob with one of our custom assets. And look at how much better that looks. It's moving. It's just much nicer. So there we go. That fits the corner very nicely. We'll just butt this over and I like it. Now I want to think about the orientation of these things a bit. And here's what I'm thinking. We'll keep our fire station more or less right here. I'm going to put the police department over here. We'll have some pedestrian facilities linking the two areas. I'm going to take our healthcare and we're going to get that off our main drag and put that over here. And we really need a city hall. So I've been thinking about this and I love the tax office. Thing is, I didn't unlock everything and I'm not going to. They want me to construct a water treatment plant. So there are two ways that you can go about unlocking this if you have mods. The first is in Find It, and this is the route that we're going to go. You can unlock all right here, and now through Find It, you'll be able to take any building you want. The other way you could do it is through Game Anarchy. So through Game Anarchy, you can unlock all, but you likely would have to restart the game to make this happen. And speaking of Game Anarchy, I want to Control-Shift-G into its in-game interface because I want to be able to place certain buildings without limits. And this might be one of those buildings. Maybe we place this again. Now we can place as many of these buildings as we want. So that's everything from our stock exchange to our factory buildings to our campus buildings, all the way to our monuments. So now this search is still here. I'll refresh it and now it shows up. I can now take the tax office and we'll put that over here. And the other building I think is worth building is the Public Works building. It's probably the building I forget about the most. I don't know if we want to keep it here or not. We'll need to give that some thought. Although it's a really ugly building. We are going to hide that. We're going to borrow a bit of land from the Transit Authority and we'll stick it over here. So that should be a much more suitable location for it. And that gives us the ability to take our tax office and give it a more prominent location. Maybe even turn it, do something like this. Now, one thing that you can see that I've already done is I bobbed the parking out of this asset. I did that because I want to add parking behind here. So we're going to do something a little bit better back here. And let's move this over as well because I want to have some sort of plaza in this area. And then the last thing I'd love to add through here, I'd love to add a bank. So I've already played the stock market simulator off camera so we can just place this. And there we go. We've got a bank and I feel like these really fit together nicely and I like the way they look. Now we're going to add a road back here and we'll go with a 1-unit alleyway. And we'll run that to about right there. We could make a connection onto the main drag. I would expect that someone would want that. Let's place one of our new parking lots. And there, I did make some accommodations. We'll make it possible to get in and out both ways. That's really a public safety consideration. And considering all of our public safety buildings are here, I'd expect that to be a consideration. And then I also want to add this loop right here. So this is for buses. And then in addition to that, we're going to need some faculty parking. You're going to add that off to the side and we'll have some path connections to get there. And then the last thing we need on our school campus is some sort of playground. So I want to add that to the rear and we're going to lean on our pedestrian roads once again. And there we go. I'm loving the angles. So we are going to keep up with that. We're going to finish off the rest of this area when we build some of our residential properties. But for now, I think that's where we're going to leave this. We need to get some sort of pedestrian connectivity through here though. We focused on it so much and basically avoided it through here. So what I'm going to do is add a new path and that'll get you from one side of the city services complex to the other. We'll add another one over here. And I changed my mind on the death care. We'll go with our cryopreservatory. This at least looks okay. So, and it doesn't have the smoke coming off, which I've always thought is pretty dark. And now that we have this path, this is going to be where we have some sort of memorial plaza. And we've got these really nice pavers that I think we're going to use, these herringbone light corner pieces. We'll go with this. And I want to have a little place that has a monument. And there we go. Just use move it to keep things nice and clean through here. And we have a nice little spot for a monument now. And we've got this lovely George Washington statue. This is the kind of thing you might expect to see here. We can't place it in here because it wants to be on a road. Not a big deal. We'll just move it over here. And then we'll use one of our invisible roads. Create a tiny segment, and now that's happy. And then we'll have a couple of cannons too, just for good measure. There we go. Now let's generously landscape through here, but in a very manicured way so that it feels like a place that people care about. And there we go. So this isn't perfectly lined up on the corner, and I'm sure that that's going to trigger some people. I'm one of those people, but it does happen. We're going to roll with it. And we've added a fountain here with some jets. We've added this little park back here and a ton of landscaping. And honestly, this feels like a nice place to work. I think it would be a great place to be a planner. So we're going to roll with it. And with that, I think that we are about ready to move on to our residential properties. To begin, I want to talk a little bit about the theory about what we're going to do today. We want this to be detailed, but we want it to be quick to implement. And we're going to be placing all the buildings. So that's a little bit of a wrinkle in this. So I want to focus on this area first, which is probably going to be the most traditional looking area. And we're going to use Kreiderschat's lovely Canadian homes. So I want to place these around the cul-de-sac. So we're going to just place these randomly using our random button, which is question mark. So basically what I've done here is create what I think is the perfect cul-de-sac for this neighborhood. Getting very specific because we are going to be cloning this in a few different locations. And now that we have this in place, what we're going to do is just use our marquee selection tool and only grab our buildings, then Control C these, and we'll place them right over here. So is it the height of realism having the exact same buildings plopped just slightly over? Probably not, but it is a way to make this fill in fairly quickly, and we're going to go for it. And that looks pretty good. The nice thing is when you paste it, the colors do change. So you'll notice that we've got a red house here and a yellow one right here. Just a nice little way to vary it up a bit. And now for the rest of these, we can just come through and fill these in. There we go. And I forgot to mention, for these areas, I want to imagine that Chue decided to sell these couple of blocks right here to one developer and these blocks to another. So we're going to see the building styles change, but be consistent within these couple of blocks. And I really like the way that this has turned out. We do need to clean a couple of things up though. So I'm going to remove all the trees, and then I want to copy some trees here. And there we go. I think that that would be an excellent place to live. But before we move on to this area, which I think is the part that I'm the most excited about, I want to focus on this because we've got to get some apartments through here. And we've got the perfect apartments because we have some assets from Chuckles. So to find these, I'm going in to find it, and I'm going to organize this by asset creator. And interestingly enough, I think that this asset creator must have changed their name. Initially, they were called President Twitter. So there we go. We'll go with it. Right here, we've got two different apartments that they have, though, and they're kind of modern style apartments. So we've got this multi-B and the multi-A. The only difference here is that some of these are 2 wide and the others are 3. And now that we've got these more or less laid out, I'm going to add a circulation pattern through here. And now we just need to do the fine grain adjustments on our buildings just to make sure that there's no overlap of craziness happening. And there we go. Now, the reason we have this circulation pattern through here is we are going to add parking. And I think we're pretty good with our apartment, but I do think we need to do a little bit more around the school. And I'm pretty pleased with how this turned out. Just a nice little campus. I backed some of these trees up for sightline reasons, but just a little bit of landscaping, not overdoing it, just trying to give it a presence. Also got some fence back here to keep the kids safe. And the very last thing I want to do is add some flags. So one right up front here, obviously one at the police station, one at City Hall, one over here. I don't know if the hospital would have one, but we would definitely have one at the fire department, and we might even have one at the bank. Hard to say, but we'll go for it. Lots of flags. Looking very good. And now we've got our last little residential spot to figure out for today, and that's right about here. Now, I think we're going to need to take this closer to the water, and here's the general design. We're going to have the houses face this pedestrian path. So I want this to go another block back because I want this to end on an alleyway. So what I mean by that is the alley behind the house is going to be the back of the waterfront as well. So we've got to go back at least one more block. This is a 140. So we'll go back 140 here. And then we've got to go back another 140 because that's where our alley will be. And this will also be an alley. And then we are going to need to extend this out another, I'm guessing 6 tiles. I want to use this Big Keys modern pedestrian key. And one of the reasons for that is it's actually a network road, which means that it can actually have zoning on it. And I'm going to extend this all the way down to here. And then you can connect this right to the roadway network, which is super cool. There we go. You might be thinking, wow, this looks absolutely crazy. What are we going to do here? The first thing we need to do, so this could actually be zonable, is we want to flatten this out. And now because this is a road, we have one really excellent luxury available to us. We can just reverse the directionality, and there we go, completely fixed. Now I'm going to select all these nodes here. We want to set them to the height of another node, maybe this one. And we are going to have our new neighborhood right here. Now this is going to be designed in a bit of the new urbanist way. It's going to be kind of a strange neighborhood, but I think it would be an excellent place to live. So we're going to take some of our Sears Craftsman homes and place them along here. Rather than searching by asset creator, we're going to search by our tag list. So we've already made a Sears tag list. Now it's just a matter of doing the same thing we did over here. We're going to focus on these pedestrian roads only. And now we're going to space these evenly, just like we did with our last buildings. And then the last thing I want to do is add some garages back here. So this is something that I think it would be required in a modern development. And these are the Pittsburgh garages. So we're going to place some of these. And we're going to place these on the alleyways. And now one of the things I'm noticing is that we've got this road that has the detached sidewalk, and it makes the garages look a little bit weird. So we will swap this out for one of the roads with the attached sidewalk. And now all of our garages are set a little ways back, which is not a big deal. We can fix that easy enough. And that's looking pretty good. I've got one more idea though. And I'm not sure how you're going to feel about this, but I want to grab this privacy fence. It's a network fence. We're going to run this all the way through this neighborhood. So I'm going to turn the snap twos off. I'll turn angle on only. And basically the idea is to divide up the parcels here. So I'm going to run these all the way through here. And we should be able to just do that and then divide up parcels individually. And then we just have to grab the nodes and scoot them over so that our yards make a bit more sense. And it's not going to be perfect, but this is pretty darn good. And this basically allows us to have a neighborhood where you have these really tight houses, but they still get a bit of privacy from their yard. Obviously, there are some other changes that we need to make. These are in reverse. The only way to fix these is with the network multi-tool. So we'll need to come here and use our invert segment mode. And you just click on each of these segments. There we go. So that should be most of them. Obviously, a couple of stellaways here and there. But then it's just adding a bit of landscaping behind it. So there we go. You can kind of see what we could do here if we got a little bit creative with this. I've completed all of the fencing now, and I'm going to clone these blocks into these other blocks. So the way I'm going to do that is to just get rid of all of the trees here. Then we're going to use move it extensively here. And I basically want to select everything except for the path and the roads. So I'm going to use the marquee selection tool and try to be very careful about what I'm doing. And interestingly, our paths are so far off that I will have to move them. And that's honestly pretty good. Let me explain a couple of changes that I made to this, just so that you're aware. First of all, you can see that I have butted the garages up against one another. I tried to consolidate them so we have as few access points onto these local roads as possible. Every house has been given a tree, and I've tried to orient things so that it's really nice and logical. Now I get it, this is not the most diverse way of building this housing, but it gets the job done, it does the trick. And then we'll upgrade this road. I gotta make sure collision is off here, and that might trigger some trees coming up. We'll have to figure that out after the fact, but we had to do it. We had to do it. And there we go. And it really does feel like a more lively place than a lot of the neighborhoods that I put together. Maybe lively is not the word. You don't really see any people on the streets, but I'm sure that they're coming. I'm sure of it. It just feels cozy. I like it. So I think that it's time that we move on from the residential section to our main attraction, the waterfront. Now, I'm just going to admit it, I'm very excited for this section because we're going to be using a whole bunch more of Chuckle's assets. And we have a bunch of commercial strip buildings. So these are the 5 pieces of this mall set. And honestly, they're very attractive. We could just build this up and down here and probably be fine with it, but I think we can elevate these. We are focused on the pedestrian nature of this, so I do want to extend our pedestrian path right through here. It's the main attraction. And I see that these buildings already don't have water. So let's just get this put in and then let's elevate these. So what we're going to do is start fresh. Now I'm going to place a few of these, a couple that we know what's going to be there. I want to throw these pieces over here for our use later. So Raccoon has a whole bunch of these lower level store type uses. So we're going to place a variety of these. So Grunny has some similar assets. This is a pizzeria and a Starbucks. There's also this bakery and this nice fancy restaurant, and then an ice cream shop and a sushi shop. So I think that that's a good mix. We don't want to have all of these higher end outlets there. We want to have a mix of different things. So here's how we're going to handle this. First of all, I want to line all of these up in a row, and we'll line it right up with the key wall. And we also see the Guinness truck driving down the promenade. We're going to handle that too. But what I want to get to first is filling this out. It seems like we could just slide these in. There's actually only one piece that really looks nice with, and that's this one. The main reason is these windows at the bottom are too tall. We're going to place these wherever we have buildings. Like, so wherever we have these different restaurants that we're going to put there, we're going to have this piece. And then we are going to try to separate things and have a filler piece in between. And we can alternate the filler pieces. And you see, we just use Move It to tuck it back in there, and look at how nice that looks. Now, there are a couple of corruptions that you might see with the graphics. For whatever reason, with this particular asset, you've got to kind of shake that around, but then it goes away. And now we can go through here, and just start selecting these and popping them through. And just like that, magically, it is done. And I think it's looking pretty outstanding. Always a couple of more things you could do to make things a little bit better, but in general, I'm very pleased. The one thing I'm not so pleased with is all the trucks coming by here and the complete lack of chairs. I think there's one place that has chairs. Yeah, this restaurant right here, that is about it. Everything else, completely devoid of chairs. So let's resolve that. And the way that we're going to do it is to use our Move It mod again. And we're going to bump these back just a little bit. We want to leave some space back here to landscape behind this, even though we've oriented this so that it's the alley. It can be ugly. Well, it's not a big deal. We are going to put a little bit of landscaping back here to make it look a little bit more attractive, knowing that there might be people who walk back here, but this is a good start. I left these 3 buildings over here because to get the trucks away from here, we need to change the building spawn points. And here's where we're going to get creative. So we'll click on this. We'll go to building spawn points. And we are going to completely reverse this. So we'll go to this, which changes the area that it's pointing in, and we'll face it towards the building and then bring this to the rear. Now this breaks this building, but if you click this, it'll apply it to all buildings that are like this. And now I'm also going to copy this because now I can go to the next one, paste it, and apply it to all of those. So that just fixed all of these buildings. Now they are all loading in the rear. So if we select, there you go, right in the rear. All of these buildings in the front, well, these ones we've got to fix ourselves. And the main reason for that is we've got one of each. So we'll do that and we'll be right back. All right, and you already saw most of the trucks diving through the buildings into the rear, but we can do one better. What I'm going to do for the time is just to upgrade this so the key will wrap all the way around. Remember, this is a network. We can do whatever we want with it. So that looks pretty darn good. And now I'm going to use TMPE to restrict all traffic on this road. And I held down shift when I did this and it wrapped all the way around. The only thing that's allowed here is emergency management. There shouldn't be any need for it, but why block it? It's fine. Let's go ahead and add in some seating right here. And for this, I'm going to narrow this down to Sven Berlin. Sven has created a whole bunch of really excellent assets that you can place in front of different restaurants like this for street cafes. So what we're going to do is look for the different restaurants. So obviously Chanel doesn't need chairs in front of it, but the sushi shop might. And there you go. Just a little bit of work and you've created some interesting details. Obviously, we'll need to clean that up. But in general, you get the point. This isn't that hard to do and you can have a really big impact. You just got to be a little more careful and not try to do things from crazy angles like I do. And there we go. That is pretty great. I love that. So we're going to basically go up and down here and add that, and then we'll be right back. And there we are. And it's looking really, really busy. And I love that. This looks like a place that I want to visit. So I'm pretty excited about that. And now I want to add some trees through here. And we're just going to use intersection marking tool to make this happen. And it's going to be as simple as drawing a line here. And we're going to make this a prop because I want to have the planters. And then we'll add a rule and we'll add a tree to this. And we'll just add a regular street tree. And then it's the same deal as the last one. We'll add the same spacing. And there we go. So now we can copy this. This is going to be as easy as coming through here, Control Shift Cing this. And then if we Control Shift G to the rest of this, it'll apply this all up and down. It's also game anarchy, apparently. But there we go. We've got this all the way around. Oh, I love that. Let's add a bit of landscaping. And there we go. I am really proud of this little development. And it shows that you can make special spaces with just move it. You can do some really interesting things. And honestly, everything we built today, I think has been really a fun little project in and of itself. And with this, I do think that it's just about time that we take inventory of what we've done and we have a brief city tour. And that was a nice little tour, and it's amazing to see the differences between these developments in terms of the scale of the lots and really just the whole formation of the blocks themselves. But that absolutely happens. And when you have different developers, this is what you can see. Now, I want to fix a couple of things based on your feedback. And the first thing I want to fix is right over here. Andrew said it would be a great idea to have a pedestrian connection between Old Johnson's Creek and New. And I completely agree, so let's add one. There we go. And I decided to use a zoo path just to mix it up a bit. I like the way it looks. I think it looks very, very interesting. Now over here, I swapped this out and basically used one of our new suburban streets, but we've got to also add our cul-de-sac bulb. So we'll control N into node controller and lose a part of it. And there we go, 150, and we've got the perfect cul-de-sac. So there we go. Very pleased with that suggestion. Thank you so much, Andrew. That was a good one. The next fix is related to lighting, and there were a number of you that suggested I use some other lighting on the road, potentially the university path lighting. So let's take it tonight and see how that looks. So here we are, nighttime again, and it is pitch black. These really don't cast very much light, which is really unfortunate. Thankfully, we can quickly change it. So here we are in network skins, and we're just going to try different lighting. So here is our university street light. And I don't know that it's a ton better. Let's see if we shrink the distance to 20 or so meters, if that fixes it. So this isn't going to work for us. Let's try something else. Maybe this avenue light. Yeah, that belongs in the center of a road. So because the university path light didn't work, I tried a few different lights, and I don't know what this new street light is, where it's from, but it seems like it's really doing the trick for us. So it's set 30 meters apart. And what you can see is that there's a little slightly dim spot. I'm going to shrink this up. And the illumination here is called foot candles. And there would be a minimum number of foot candles in an area for this to be legal. And my guess is those dark spots are not good enough. So we would need to shrink this up. Maybe it's 25. There it is. The dark spots are basically gone. So now I'm going to run this all the way through here. And now that I think of it, this is actually an opportunity for us to swap these over to our new suburban roads as well. So let's do that. And the funny thing is, these lights are from those roads. So I think it's a good demonstration of why you may want to use these new assets. They are really outstanding. I want to do this during the daytime though, so we're going to swap it on over. And there we go, looking really good. And I love the way the bulbs look, the way the pads look for the bus stops. It's really outstanding. And I love that you can customize this to make it even better if you want to. Look at that. That is what I'm talking about. You could get into the level of detail if you want to move the homes so that they're not in front of the bus stops, which is something I'd absolutely expect to see, but we are going to leave it. We're not going to get into that level of minutia. What we are going to get into a level of minutia about is the lighting though. So let's go ahead, see how this looks at night. That is much more appropriate. You can actually see what's going on now. Now, I do want to point out a couple of things. There are some spots where it's a bit dark, and I think that's maybe where we have transit. Yeah, it looks like there's a bus stop sign. So maybe that's a concern, or maybe it's extra nodes. But either way, this looks really good, and I'm pumped about it. And last but not least, let's name some things. So Gaiman 1334 has an absolutely wonderful name for the park, basically suggesting that Vang would want to include his surname on something if the city council would approve of this. And here's the thing, this city is so small, I'm guessing that they don't have naming conventions for this sort of thing, so we're going to absolutely do it. Vangton Park. I love it. Thank you so much for the suggestion. We've got one more naming suggestion, and this one comes from Plush Century, and the naming suggestion is for the entire lake itself. And we are naming this Vang Lake. And I made this a park because eventually we're going to make this something better than it is right now. It's got this little commercial waterfront with a bit of death, and it's going to be a really significant tourist draw. I messed something up. So if I paste this, it's still there. We'll apply it to all the corners. And now it should be good to go. Never bad to check your work. And actually, this makes perfect sense. I did not have a corner over here when I modified those, but these are all adjusted. So now hopefully that dead person gets picked up. And now that we've got this fixed, we've got one more thing to take a look at, and that is over here. I just want to see how our transit routes look. So this, our train, it has some traffic, but I think we could take this down to 2 trains and be just fine. And then I want to look at our bus routes. And it's route 12, 13, and 14 like we looked at before. And for route 12, this is the route that goes out to Old Johnson's Creek. And you can see that there's almost no one on the bus, almost no one at the stops. It's a circulator. We're going to take this down to maybe 2, and I want to change the color so I can actually recognize it. And that should be more than enough to meet all the needs of this route. You can see that most of the buses, actually, we'll take it up a little bit further, maybe 3 buses. And now we'll have mostly full buses. Route 13 right here is the route that goes counterclockwise. And most of these buses are empty. There's one stop that has some people at it. I'm guessing it's right there. The rest of the stops are pretty empty. So again, I think that we can take this down to maybe 3 vehicles and adjust up as necessary. And then finally, our clockwise route. And our busiest stop looks to be right here in this neighborhood, right next to the bus station. But for the most part, no one's waiting at the stops. We've got a bunch of empty vehicles. We're going to take these down to 3 as well. We'll have to see what happens. There's not a lot of activity, which is kind of disappointing. It's a lot less than I thought it was going to be, but that happens from time to time, and things will continue to improve as the city builds out. And with that, I think that this is where we're going to leave it today. And I hope that you've enjoyed this video. We've accomplished a lot, and I really like the way the community has filled out. If you did, please hit the like button. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you for the privilege of your time. There are a number of things you could be doing today, and you decided to hang out with me, and I don't take that for granted. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.